64, the 64th Psalm. 72 sermons later, we are here at Psalm 64. This one doesn't give us a lot in the superscription if you have a Bible that gives those. This is a Psalm of David, so we know the author. It was later given to the musicians, the chief musician, to be put to music, so it became a worship psalm. But we don't know exactly what was going on with the background. I personally believe, not that it matters what I think, but I think this way. I think this is when one of the times, or it's one of the Psalms about David fleeing from Saul that you'll find in 1 Samuel 21, and we'll talk about that some as we get into it. But I just think that's the case. And so without further ado, let's go ahead and stand together if you're able, and we'll read and then pray. And we'll ask the Lord to help us after we read His Word. So let me encourage you. I was challenged by this as at the ordination. Follow along closely. Don't just zone out and listen, but follow along in your Bible as I read. Hear my voice, O God, in my prayer. Now here's the thrust of the prayer. Verse number 1. This is whenever you slow down to read, it's amazing what God shows you. Look what He says. Preserve my life from fear of the enemy. Did you see that? He didn't say preserve my life from the enemy. The fear of the enemy. Because oftentimes, it's not even something that's really happening that can take our life off course, but in fact, a perceived something happening, a fear of something. That's, again, it's right there. It's always been there. It's not like this is the first, but I'll tell you the first 18 times I read this psalm, didn't see that part. I'm looking at everything, and then I slowed down. I'm like, hey, that's important. Verse 2, hide me from the secret counsel of the wicked, from the insurrection of the workers of iniquity, who whet their tongue like a sword, and bend their bows to shoot their arrows, even bitter words, that they may shoot in secret at the perfect. Suddenly do they shoot at him, and fear not. They encourage themselves in an evil matter. They commune of laying snares privily. They say, who shall see them? So if you haven't caught that, whoever his enemy is, he believes they are working together and they're talking bad about him. They're slandering his name. They're trying to set traps for him. Verse number 6, they search out iniquities. They accomplish a diligent search. So they're looking for problems. It's kind of like anytime, I wouldn't get into politics because the moment you do, people are going to search out iniquity. Nobody's perfect, by the way, and if you're in politics, they're going to find out. Both the inward thought of every one of them and the heart is deep. But God, by the way, that's the shift. Verse 1's the real part of the prayer. Then you got 2 through 6, which is really the issue of the enemies. Verse 7, all of it hinges right here. But God shall shoot at them with an arrow. Suddenly shall they be wounded. So they shall make their own tongue to fall upon themselves. All that see them shall flee away. When God makes an example out of somebody, most everybody wants to back up anyway. All the men shall fear and shall declare the work of God, for they shall wisely consider of His doing. Verse 10, the righteous shall be glad in the Lord and shall trust in Him. That's important with verse 1. Because if you're going to pray for overcoming fear, really the answer is right there in verse 10. Let me say it again. The righteous shall be glad in the Lord and shall trust in Him. And all the upright in heart shall glory. Let's pray. Dear Heavenly Father, I ask that You'd help us in a short amount of time to traverse this psalm, to get to some application that may be beneficial and helpful to us in our lives. And Lord, I know I needed a reminder, and I know it's easy to get caught up on some things, Lord, but I know that if we learn to trust in You, there is no more fear in our hearts of what the enemy can do, because we serve a bigger God. Help us to realize that. Use this message, empty me of self and with the Holy Spirit. Challenge the hearers. In Jesus' name I pray. Amen. You may be seated. Thank you for standing. Simple title, fear. Fear. It should have seemed like there's a lot to fear. If I'm honest, as a 31-year-old in America, in 2024, I have a lot I could be afraid of. Elections are right around the corner. So is that something you're fearful of? I try not to be. But if I'm honest, I'm thinking, man, if some certain parties are elected, I don't know what our country is going to look like in a few years. What they've done in 3 scares me. Stock markets have seemed more volatile. And if you're listening to experts in finance, they're saying they're due for an imminent crash, which is not fun. Again, as a 31-year-old, they say by 2033 there'll be no more Social Security. It's a financial thing. Like, oh. So what do we do? I don't know, because I don't know. The median home price in America has reached almost $500,000 countrywide, making it almost impossible to buy homes for many. That's got some people afraid. Will I ever? By the way, that's made a lot of my generation, the one behind me, give up on trying. By the way, if you want my anecdotal, what I think is wrong, I think it's wrong that we are allowing businesses to buy single-family homes. As soon as you allow businesses to buy single-family homes, you're creating a problem. And that's a lot of that is going on in America. Anyways, that's neither here nor there. War, of course, all over the world, particularly with Israel. Why are you particularly with Israel? Because I stand particularly with Israel.
That's right.
So what happens there is about as important as what happens here.
That's right.
Yeah, but it's more important than what's happening here. The only reason I can say what's happening here is important because I live here. I say all that to say there's a lot to be in fear of, and that's just the general nationwide stuff. We didn't even mention the personal. Right? Because if we got into the personal, then there's your kids and your grandkids and the way that they're leading their lives, or there's health, or there's the financial side of it personally. Forget what it is for everybody else. Let me talk about my issues. There's surgeries upcoming, and there's events and things going on our calendar. And I wish I could say that Christians seem to be less fearful than the world, but the reality is, all across America, Christians and non-Christians alike are afraid. Fear is a devastating controller. Here's kind of if I could say I have a sharpened take-home truth, and I know you don't care what that means, but if I could boil down my message into one sentence. When one is governed by fear, they are no longer guided by faith. When one is governed by fear, they're no longer guided by faith. Proverbs 29:25 declares, "The fear of man bringeth a snare." So real quick, let's talk about some causes of fear. Fear doesn't always have a definite object, but oftentimes it does. Every fear object is something we perceive as both present and powerful, something over which we have no control. And this is where fear differs from worry. People worry about something uncertain or unknown. Worry will often give way to fear, which is where you start focusing on something more particular. Fear is most often the result of threats, whether real or perceived. Now, I want to be clear on this. Fear is most often the result of threats, whether real or perceived. Let's be clear here. Not everything that you think is a problem is actually a problem. Listen, marriages can be rocky just by what somebody thinks the other person thinks. I'll just confess my own sin. This is, and I mean this is my sin. I've not been the most attentive this week to my wife. So today she just blatantly asked me, "What's wrong?" So what do you mean? I'm just trying to figure out what's wrong. It doesn't seem, and she explained her side of it. Now, I'm not saying, she may have had some fear in her heart that something was wrong, and I told her, I said, nothing's wrong. If anything, I felt like a jerk, had to apologize. I was not being the husband I was supposed to be, and I gave her the reasons why. Not that I'm not trying to give excuses, and I'm not saying I was right in doing it, but I explained to her that it was nothing that there was some fears building up in her mind. Why doesn't he? Why aren't we? Why isn't everything? Perceived and real. Let me read 1 Samuel 21:10 through 12 real quick, so I can give you why I think this is when David fled from Saul, particularly, because notice the words here. "And David arose and fled that day for fear of Saul, and went to Achish, the king of Gath. And the servant of Achish said unto him, Is not this David, the king of the land? Did they not sing one to another of him in dances, saying, Saul hath slain his thousands, and David his 10,000s? And David laid up these words in his heart, and was sore afraid now of Achish, the king of Gath. So, there's at least two people at that point that he's afraid of. I don't actually think he was necessarily really afraid of his son when he ran from his son. He was much older. He was much wiser. He had more time with God. I think it was more like God just handled this, and he just wanted it to be handled correctly, that everything would not... He didn't want his son to be dead. That was one of his stipulations. Nobody's supposed to kill his son. We know Joab did, but you know what I mean? Yeah, he did. And so we understand that. But I think this was when he was a little younger. Because, by the way, I hope as you get older, you get less prone to fear because you've learned to trust in God. But I think he's a little younger, so bear with me. Sometimes fear comes by threatened danger. You know, crime. You won't go certain places. Why? Because it's dangerous. Holly and I were just talking, because we were talking about going to the Texas State Fair, and Miss Julie and Miss Nancy were mentioning places to stay away. And it's scary. And you know, there's this fear of, hey, if I'm at this certain place at this certain time, some bad things happen. By the way, I know those places. Try to stay away from those. At least I know those in New Mexico. I like living out here. There's nothing that goes on. I like that. The scariest thing I hear now is the bear. We named him Brownie, and he's getting smarter. He took a bag of trash this time. He didn't get greedy, knocked it over, and he took the bag and went all the way to the very edge of the property, right by the fence. So he was gone, so we didn't see him. And then the next day, I have this huge trash mess all the way at the top. I was like, "Oh, you stinking bear! It's getting smart." Anyways, but there's war and there's violent weather is even, you know, that's a threat and danger. People, I don't know how people live in Florida. Or like those coastal places. They just get used to... I can get living in Oklahoma because it's like, it may happen. A tornado may come. 3 minutes, it's going to come down, it's going to... But I would live constantly in this fear of whatever is going on in the ocean, because it's completely different with hurricanes. It's like, well, we're watching a storm front out in the Gulf of Mexico, and as it builds up, we're looking at it might touch land next Thursday. Next Thursday? So I'm going to sit here and think about this till next Thursday? Anyways, there's threatened values. We become anxious when our freedom or other things we value are in danger of being undermined or taken away. I don't mean to make this political, but you know, there is a party that's running, and they've clearly stated that they're going to try to force a buyback program of firearms. Well, that's a freedom of America. That's a right we have, a constitutional right to bear arms, and they're trying to. They can phrase it however they want, but it's like, well, that makes me nervous. Because, by the way, the point of guns was not to hunt. That's not what it's talking about. I always hate that argument. Well, do you really need an AR-15 to hunt? That's not what I want an AR-15 for. Got a 308 for that. This is for if our government ever turns against us. Anyways. There's threat of conflict. Conflict causes anxiety, and even the thought of having to have conflict causes anxiety and fear in our hearts. If you know you have to have a meeting with your boss, I've jokingly said, and it's not really a joke, but I've told you, if you really want to stress me out, just tell me today you want to meet with me Saturday or next Tuesday. You want to talk about something. Say, it's not even a conflict. It doesn't matter. You better alleviate that, by the way, and let me know. Nothing serious, nothing bad. I just wanted to sit down and talk with you about whatever. Give me some time to pray about it instead of me just going, Lord, what are they mad about? What did I say? What did I do? What did I say? What did I do? No, conflict, it scares us, even if we don't have any real reason to. Well, I think that's a lot of reason why we don't witness or door knock, because it can turn to conflict. Well, I've been door knocking where it has turned to conflict. Why? Because there are people that are at enmity with God, as in everyone that's not His child. And don't be surprised as it gets worse and worse. According to one study, fear often arises because people have irrational beliefs. Now, we talked, all those that I've mentioned are real. Conflict's real, rather crime, all that stuff's real. I'm not going to go stay the night in a hotel in Albuquerque because the real threat of my vehicle getting broken into is real. That's real. But according to studies, fear often arises because people have irrational beliefs. Everything's going to get worse. Nothing can be done. I I don't know that this is true, but I think I could articulate it and argue it if I had to. But is it possible that verses 2 through 6, and we're not going to read them again for time's sake, but is it possible that those were just perceived fears in David's heart? Because listen, verse 1, he's not asking for deliverance against an enemy. He's asking deliverance from the fear of an enemy. And then he mentions a lot of stuff that happens behind closed doors. Okay, we will read it just really quick. Just go with me. Verse 2, hide me from the secret counsel of the wicked. How do you know they're having a secret counsel if it's secret? Oh, I just know it. They're having meetings without me. Listen, there's pastors that are super afraid that people are meeting without them, trying to undermine things and change things. I've been in churches where that's happened. What'd you do? We left the church, but from insurrection of the workers of iniquity, who whet their tongues like a sword and bend their bows to shoot their arrows, even bitter words. So maybe he heard some of these words, or maybe it's all hearsay. I know what they're saying about me. Well, how do you know that? Well, I mean, I just really think that's what they're... Now, I'm not saying it's not... This could be real. I'm just saying, is it possible that it's perceived? That they may shoot in the secret at the perfect. Again, in secret. Suddenly they do not shoot at him and fear not. They encourage themselves in an evil matter. They commune of laying snares privily. A snare is just a trap. The point of a trap is that the other person doesn't know there's a trap. Are you with me here? That perhaps what David is saying in this psalm, and I'm not saying that other commentators or theologians would even back me up, but just the way he phrased verse 1 changes the way that verses 2 through 6 look to me. It almost looks like to me that he's saying, these are the things that I can't stop thinking about, and I don't even know if they're real. Are you with me? Does that make sense? Man, I know they're meeting together. Saul's got with the king of Gath. They're conspiring against me now. Well, how do you know that? I just feel it in my heart. I just think that's what they're doing. Man, they're laying a trap for me in a secret place. Well, how do you know that? Well, I don't, but I just think that's what they would do. Listen, I know we look at David like he's the man after God's own heart, and the Bible says he is, but I'm telling you, he's still a man. And I know I can get to the place where I'm thinking thoughts that I don't need to think. And then I got to remind myself, God, help me to just think on what I know is right and what I know is true. It may have just been perceived. Listen, when you fear the worst, or when you fear that the worst will happen, your own thoughts may help to bring it about. Someone once wrote, fear is the wrong use of imagination. It is anticipating the worst, not the best that can happen. Isn't it funny how we don't usually anticipate what's the best case scenario? I'll be honest, it just came to mind as soon as I said this. I've not thought the best case scenario of my finger surgery is like I'm healed up in a week and there's nothing. Not once. You know what I've thought about? I'm going to show up to Fort Collins. I'm going to have this dang huge, I'm going to look like a foam finger on the end of my finger, and I'm going to be distracting when I preach instead of, and it's already bad enough when it's somebody that they don't see on a regular basis. I'm hoping you guys can get over it, but I know my wife said in 2020, she said, that thing was distracting. And she watches me talk with it all day. I have a funny illustration, but honestly, I have to just, for time's sake, move past it. It's okay. It wasn't that great, probably. Let me read what Max L. Lucado wrote concerning fear. His modus operandi, or operandi, however you say that, is to manipulate. To manipulate you with the mysterious. To taunt you with the unknown, fear of death, fear of failure, fear of God, fear of tomorrow. His arsenal is vast. His goal, to create cowardly, joyless souls. He doesn't want to make the journey to the mountain, he doesn't want you to make the journey to the mountain. He figures if he can rattle you enough, you will take your eyes off the peaks and settle for a dull existence in the flatlands. But if you live in fear, you most likely know the reasons that you fear. But what do we do about it? Well, what do we do about it? Well, there's the cure for fear that comes in our text starting in verse number 7. It's simply this: trust in God. Walk daily in contact with Him. John Witherspoon wrote, It is only the fear of God that can deliver us from the fear of man. When you're fearing God like you're supposed to, and you understand that He is sovereign, He's in control in everything that He is doing, and He's at work, you stop fearing what man can do because you understand there's nothing that man can do that God isn't going to overdo if He wants it overdone. Once you arrive at verse 7, you see the shift. The word but. Rather, David was just perceiving the threat or he knew it was fact. Doesn't matter because his faith in God was real. Read verses 7 through 9 real quick again. But God shall shoot them with an arrow. Obviously, he's not meaning like physically God's going to like Zeus thunderbolt from heaven. That's not what God was, or what he was saying God was going to do. Suddenly shall they be wounded. So they shall make their own tongue to fall upon themselves. All of a sudden, they're going to turn against themselves, so they're going to make themselves look real dumb with what they said. They're going to be found out to be a liar. They're going to be, if they are talking about me, I don't have to worry about it because, listen, truth, it'll come out. I've heard it said truth and time are best friends. They always get together in the end. Truth and time are best friends. They're always going to get together in the end. There may be a period where it seems like the truth isn't going to come out, but you give it time, truth is always going to come out. A person's character is always going to come out. And he's like, I don't have to worry about it. All that see them shall flee away. And then once they're the ones that made themselves look dumb, people are going to be, okay, I can see God's punishing this dude. And all men shall fear and shall declare the work of God. David is saying it without saying it. It's going to be so evident that this was God that's handled the situation. It's going to be evident because everybody's going to fear God. Everybody's going to declare His glory. Everybody's going to focus on Him. It's going to be evident David's saying, I'm not doing it. For they shall wisely consider of His doing. They're going to look at what God was doing and say, yeah, this was God. Okay, this was God. All his fear left him in that moment, which was the goal. Remember, verse 1, his goal was to preserve his life from the fear of the enemy. God did that. David's faith pushed out fear even though the threat was still real. He was still on the run, make no mistake. Regardless of what he knew was going on in secret places and traps that they were laying, he knew his life was still at stake because he had to run because Saul tried to pin him to the wall with a javelin, right? I mean, like it's real. But he wasn't worried about it. Let me give you a few, I don't even know if I'd want to call these quotes, sayings, maybe, statements. Fear imprisons while faith liberates. Fear paralyzes, but faith empowers. Fear disheartens, faith encourages. Fear weakens, faith strengthens. Fear shipwrecks, faith equips. Fear causes hopelessness, while faith rejoices in the power and presence of God. Someone has said, I'd rather walk with God in the dark than go all alone in the light. Now, that's a real fear of God where you can say, I'll trust God and go with Him. Listen, David was in the dark, so to speak. And he's saying, I'll walk with you through the dark. I got better chances than if I'm in the light and I can see what's coming. The more we depend on God, the more dependable we find He is. There is no panic in trust. 1 Peter 5:7, casting all your care upon Him, for He careth for you. Look at verse 10, the end here, and we're almost done. The righteous shall be glad in the Lord, and shall trust in Him, and all the upright in heart shall glory. He gets to the end. I think verse 10 is the answer to verse 1. It's like he reasoned it all out in himself through praying with God. He said, God, I need you to deliver me from the fear of the enemy. And then he's talking about the enemy. And it's almost like, I don't know if he came to himself and realized that this is all perceived. He doesn't really know. But it didn't matter because he knew but God. In verse number 7, he says, man, He'll handle it. He'll shoot him down. He'll make him look bad. Everybody will see. Everybody will flee away from him. They'll declare God's glory because they see how God works. And he says, the righteous shall be glad in the Lord and shall trust in Him. He said, I think that was the point. He said, this is what I'm going to do. My fear's overtaking me and I'm going to stop. I'm going to pause. I'm going to pray. And I'm going to remind myself that as the righteous, because he was the righteous, he didn't do anything wrong. He did nothing wrong to Saul. He made a very foolish move by going to Gath, if I'm honest. But when it came to him and Saul, he did do nothing wrong. He'd always been on Saul's side. He'd never gone against Saul. He never tried to usurp Saul. He never did any of those things. He said, the righteous shall be glad in the Lord and shall trust in Him. I'm just going to trust Him. And all the upright in the heart shall glory. Can I just real quick help you? If you've done nothing wrong in your life, why do you expect God to give you something bad? No, I know bad things happen, and I know He allows it to, but I'm saying, why are you expecting that? Why are you living like, if you're trying to live a righteous life, if you're trying to live an upright life for God, why do you think He's going to just, our good Heavenly Father, why are you expecting Him? Why are you fearing that He's going to pour down bad things on your life and living in that thought? Why do that? Well, because bad things have happened. You know, I understand bad things have happened in my own life too. Majority of the time I'll say this, it's not when I was trying to be righteous and upright, number one. And even if it was, I did understand this, that I counted it a joy that I fell into diverse temptations, because at that point I took that I was trying to do a work so good that Satan decided he wanted to get in on it. And when those two thoughts came to my, like, what am I worried about? Let me finish because we got it. Let me encourage you tonight. Fear will keep you from accomplishing the goal He's set for you. And our church, once fear is gone, and our church. And once fear is gone, the work can get done. And I have a great example or illustration for this. I will finish with this one. You ready for this? At the time it was completed in 1937, the Golden Gate Bridge was the longest suspension bridge in the world. During the first phase of the project, so when they first started it, 23 men fell to their death building it. There were very few safety devices, of course it's 1937, and things seemed to be going from bad to worse. So when it was halfway completed, they decided to take another look and to make some changes. Here's what they did. They recognized and they built the largest net, or reorganized, and built the largest net ever made and attached it under the area where the men were working. Was it worth the cost and the time it took to do it? Well, just ask the 10 men who fell into the net. Listen, not only did it save the lives of 10 men, this is important, the work was actually done sooner than planned originally because they no longer lived in fear of falling. Isn't that a good illustration for the Christian life? That when you're living in fear, you're never really going to be able to accomplish what God wants you to do because you're always afraid. But the moment you learn to trust in Him and you know He is your safety net, it makes you bold. Listen, it makes you bold to witness. Right? It makes you bold to give to missions. It brings you out of your shell in so many ways. You don't mind being peculiar for Christ. You don't mind the unknown. You're not afraid to step out by faith because you know He's your net, that He's always got you. Don't let fear paralyze you when faith can empower you. David didn't. And I'd encourage you. You shouldn't either. Let's pray. Heavenly Father, I want to thank You for this time in Your Word, and I hope it was a blessing to the folks. I know it was a good reminder